Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday, September the 19th, 2007. Welcome to our regularly scheduled board meeting. Nikki, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be here today. May the decision our board makes today benefit all those involved, and may we always remember that God always gives us enough strength and enough sense for everything that He wants us to do. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Campirano, would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas Pledge.
Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Okay. Item number 1. Number 2.
Item number 2, public audience.
Sergio Tito Lopez, Monterey Trade Show. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it should be.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Campirano, I come in peace. I would like the public and the public that sees on TV to know that the Monterey Trade Show was an excellent thing. I had, because of circumstances, I hadn't been able to go in the past 2 years, but I did go 2 weeks ago, and it was an awesome thing, and I think credit should be due to the people that made the trade show happen, and these are the employees here, and then that's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Certainly was. Next item, please.
Item number 3, receive court director's report.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'll be brief because I'm going to have the staff actually make a couple of comments, and one of them is about the Monterey Trade Show, by the way. But just got some. I just want to let you know that tomorrow I'll be in Corpus Christi attending the Texas Ports and Waterways Conference. That'll be tomorrow early and Friday, so should be back here tomorrow. And then also just the kind of some of the other travel-related items. We will be participating in the American Association of Port Authorities in Virginia, and that will be at the end of this month and the first week of October. And we do have 2 members of the Commission participating in that. And then lastly, just to comment briefly, the port here hosted the Gulf Port Association, and if you recall, there was quite a bit of discussion about the Panama trip. As you know, that Panama is going to have, there are plans to widen that canal, and it's going to, everybody's already jockeying for position in terms of increased trade into the Gulf area. We have been invited, and we do have some participation on that, and that's going to be coming up in November. So we will have representatives of this board as well as staff attending that. To kind of follow up and comment on Mr. Lopez's comments about the Monterey Trade Show, of course, this was my first trade show, so from everything I understood and heard was that it was very well attended. The comments for the most part were very, very positive, but I would like to ask Tony Rodriguez to kind of come up and address the Commission and certainly the audience a little bit about the trade show in Monterey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Campirano, thank you for allowing me to say a few words on our trade reception that we had a couple of weeks in Monterrey. I want to thank Sergio for coming to the front and letting us know that it was a successful event. Of course, another successful event for the Port of Brownsville. It's actually our 13th year that we host this event in Monterrey. I think we, from past experiences, I think we had a record number of attendees and even exhibitors. I think we usually have about 21 exhibitors, and this time we had about 28 exhibitors, and I think some of them were still left behind because we basically ran out of room where to put them. But it was a very successful event. Of course, like when we first started this event, it was actually to thank our customers, and it basically evolved to become a mini trade show and basically an annual event for the Port of Brownsville and Monterrey. We have had very positive comments from our customers, for instance, from potential customers that we're looking to hopefully in the next couple of weeks start visiting and following up on some pretty good leads that we had there. Like I said, first it was to thank the customers, but it's just how it developed now that it's a new attraction for us and for them that we're coming now almost every year and trying to see what new services we're offering, and of course what is out there at the Port of Brownsville. We got pretty good leads. We had pretty good attendance from the U.S. and we had people from shipping agent that came with us too. I think I might as well touch bases on that too. So far I picked about 4 or 5 leads from some iron ores, some sand, and some monoethylene glycol that hopefully we're going to start seeing here, bringing in the near future. So if you have any questions, I'm open up to y'all for have any questions for me.
I'd just like to add, if you can elaborate a little bit on the company that came out of Pennsylvania, Mr. Rodriguez.
That's North American Shipping.
They were there.
It's going to be such a little basis on that subject.
Only to add to that, one is I'd certainly like to publicly thank Tony and Herman and Vicky and the staff here that worked in putting that together. The show or the event could only be as successful of those who participated, and again, thanking those not only who helped sponsor the event, but who attended, companies here at the port and those that help us in promoting the port. So really, I think overall, we need to publicly thank those folks, and without their participation and their support, we would not have been successful. So thank you to staff and all of those who attended, certainly Mr. Lopez.
I want to thank all our sponsors. We have pretty good sponsors this year, and if it wasn't for them, of course, the event without them is just getting better and better every year. So we're looking forward to next year again.
I personally want to thank you, Tony, and staff, and everybody that made it happen. I was fortunate to be there, and to me, it's a treat being there personally. And it was a great showing, great support. The staff did a fabulous job, and I think the people that were there were really there for the right reason. And hopefully, the sponsors keep going for a reason, and that's because they themselves are getting something out of it. So I'm glad we're doing this and continue doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
so
Chairman Arambula and Commissioner Masso. One thing is to see the staff there, but it's important to also see those that help make policy, and I think that's very well appreciated. Not only the staff of the sponsors, but certainly all the attendees. So thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to attend.
Thank you.
And finally, I know that last year it was my first time, and certainly I can attest that there were a lot more people this time around, and even the representatives from the governor's office in the city of Monterrey were there, and they also very impressed with the crowd that were there. Not only the crowds, but the interest that was there on behalf of the port.
I think it was well diversified from the public sector.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, National Shipping of America. Again, the trade show is an opportunity not only to go and see existing customers, but also, we're out there hustling for new business. Well, National Shipping of America is another company that staff has been working with, and I'd like to ask Herman Rico to come talk a little bit about that and efforts that we're doing to try to get out there and again, promote that containerized business. So with that, I'd like to ask Herman just to touch base on that.
Here's a little presentation. It's an old presentation. They're updating it. Now we'll go ahead and...
Well, one thing you'll notice about the presentation is that it mentions Freeport, but Freeport is no longer in their vocabulary. It's been replaced by the Port of Brownsville.
Oh, good.
Okay?
So that's why... I didn't want to make too many copies. We'll see you all.
We can scratch Freeport off in that Brownsville.
You can scratch it off and put the Port of Brownsville. That's no longer in consideration.
I feel like a James Bond movie where you're scratching off one of the persons.
Port of Brownsville's encrypted there.
Well, good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Capitano, Donna. National Shipping of America approached us about 6 months ago with a service that they're wanting to start between Chester, Pennsylvania and Brownsville. One of the way that it's going to start is it's a vessel that they bought off U.S. Customs. That was seized by U.S. Customs about 3 years ago. They changed the flag to a U.S. flag vessel. It's called the National Glory, and it will start service between, like I said, Chester, Pennsylvania and Brownsville. It would carry 575 containers. In reference to the Monterey Trade Show, they met with FEMSA, which is a large beer bottler in Monterey. So FEMSA is going to be basically the start of the service. They move about 300 containers a month. So right now, one of the cargoes that we're trying to find is the southbound, from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Virginia, all that area down to Brownsville. So it's looking good. We have sent them information on maquiladoras, custom brokers, everyone in the vicinity to try to bring more cargo for the vessel. So we're gearing up. We're getting ready. Hopefully, first quarter of 2008, we can count on this new service.
It's exciting.
So they're going to be Torres Presti, who's the president of National Shipping Authority, the president of the Freight Board also this year. So we're going to try to make some sales calls also in New Orleans to try to get more cargo that is going out of Houston by truck that we can get out through Brownsville on a container to Pennsylvania. So basically, like they say, where the letters meet the road, so move all the trucks off the highway, put them on the water.
Will they be using the intercoastal waterway? No?
It's an actual vessel. It'll go out on the Gulf of Mexico. It's a 6-day transit time from point A to point B.
Okay.
So basically, it would be every 2 weeks we would have it there. We're looking at every option from Pennsylvania, bringing in vehicles for the car lots down here, for the migrantes. I mean, like they say, we're not leaving any rock uncovered. We're going after
everything.
Yes.
And I believe they attended
Yes. They were also in Monterrey. They met with FEMSA, and they also met with several other companies that have already expressed interest in it. So like the presentation said, they started at Freeport, and once they started gathering more information, they said, you know what? I don't think Freeport's going to make it on this round. I think most of the cargo's out of Brownsville.
Well, I'm just going to make a statement there. I was fortunate enough to meet them in Monterey, and this goes to compliment the Port of Brownsville staff, and that was one of the reasons why they scratched off Freeport was because of our staff, and that's complimenting you, Herman, and Mr. Campirano and Donna and everybody here. And I don't want to say every name because I will never finish, and I won't remember somebody. I'll get in trouble. But I just want to thank you guys for making this happen, and it happened because of the people we have here. So congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Rico.
And just one last item before we close, and that is that Chairman Arambula, Norma Torres, myself, had an opportunity to meet with Union Pacific on Monday. I think it was a good, productive meeting. They have a new president for the southern region, Lance Fritz, so we had an opportunity to go visit with them. And of course, our theme, and it was very well received, is increased collaboration. I mean, growth for the Port of Brownsville is growth for UP, and we need to work together. And I know that Norma has already been laying the foundation for working plans to provide for additional movement of cars from the Port of Brownsville across into Mexico and back. And so I believe that the meeting with Mr. Fritz was very productive in the sense that he was certainly very receptive, very willing to obviously look at Brownsville, and that Brownsville is strategic to their growth in this area. So I think that certainly, if anything, to acquaint the new players and to state our interest and receive, I think, enthusiastically from him that when we do have issues, that the door is always open to be able to work through those issues and do what is necessary to reach a fruitful conclusion to both parties. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Mr. Alambula, but that meeting was a Monday afternoon.
I echo the same sentiments. I feel that Union Pacific, it originally started, we went into an office, and Mr. Fritz personally went into the office and asked us to come into his office personally, so we met in his office, and he expressed that he was as well willing to embrace whatever future projects that we have with the port, and to me that was exciting just to hear that. But most importantly, what really left me with a positive attitude is saying that Brownsville meant a lot to Union Pacific, and they were going to try to work any which way they could to try to accommodate our needs in the future. So that was very positive.
Copies of director reports were left for you, and with that, conclude my report.
Okay. Next item.
Item number 4, consider an action on the following consent agenda items. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of August the 29th, 2007. B, approval to authorize payments over $25,000. Item 1, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, the monthly premium for the employee dependent health insurance due September 2007 in the amount of $45,953.89. Item 2, Siemens Financial Services, Inc., its monthly lease rental payment for the mobile harbor crane due in September of $28,564.75. Item C, consideration and action on granting operator agreements with current foreign trade zone tenants. Item D, approval of the following leases. Item 1, Alamo Fireworks, Inc., a new lease, and Item 2, Zolkin, Inc., a subordination.
If I could, before we start, on this item, the minutes have had a correction to, and actually, several that are sitting here. Donna was listed as being present and willing to remove her name. Her name, Mark McPherson, needs to be corrected, and also Terry Frazier. With those corrections.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5.
Item number 5, consider an action on canceling the regular board meeting of October 3rd, 2007.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we have the American Association of Port Authority meeting in Virginia coming up, and myself and 2 members of this commission will be attending that. We don't really foresee a whole lot of items that can't wait for the regularly scheduled meeting of October the 17th. So with that, I would ask that the commission consider canceling this meeting and then just proceeding with the regular meeting scheduled for the 17th of October.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for item 5.
Item number 6, consideration and action on a request from Mr. Victor Gonzalez to be released from lease contract number 3470 to accept a bill of sale for the 2 buildings on the lease site.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Capitano. Mr. Victor Gonzalez took a lease with the board back in May of 2005 for approximately 8.64 acres of the old, a part of the old Anvil yard on the south side. It was to be for cementitious material, and he purchased 2 buildings from the district for $21,000. He never took possession of the property. He did pay 2.5 years. He is asking to terminate the lease. He's willing to pay through the end of the quarter, ending quarter, October 31st of this year. He will forfeit his security deposit of $7,686. And the last quarter payment will be $10,835.28 that he will pay. He will transfer ownership back to the district of the 2 buildings, and so we're asking the board to terminate this lease with in lieu of the and accept those payments.
Okay.
So moved. One second.
Can I make one note?
Yes, sir.
We requested a lien search on those buildings. Victor Gonzalez is a very common name. Some Victor Gonzalez's did pop up. We don't think it's him. We think it's somebody else. No relation here, but we want to make sure before we accept that and release him that
Under
we
that
do
condition.
verify there are no liens on those buildings.
Okay. Good enough. Okay. We have a motion on item number 6 by Commissioner Ozan, seconded by Commissioner Masso. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 7, consideration and action on assignments, negotiations, easements, subleases, and contracts in general. Item 1, Palacios Seafood Company, Inc., doing business as Anchor Seafood, G&O Shrimp Company, Inc. authority to negotiate.
Anchor Seafoods is asking the board to approve a release of their lease subject to our negotiating a new lease with G&O Shrimp Company. G&O has 2 other leases at the port. They're a good tenant, and they're wanting to sell out to these people, and so I'm asking the board to authority to negotiate with G&O for a new lease and prepare a release to Anchor Seafoods.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item 2, Brownsville Public Utilities Board, authority to negotiate.
Brownsville PUB last year received approval from the board to do a pilot seawater desalination plant at the fishing harbor. This is due to expire September the 6th, and they're asking for a new lease. The port participated in the project in-kind contribution of rent, security deposit, fishing harbor security, water, and sewer. Those amounts total to about $11,263 per year. I'm asking the board to give me authority to negotiate a new lease or extension.
So moved. Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
One thing
Hold
on that is that, again, you know, essentially the port was kind of a partner in that project, so I just want to be clear that we do it under the same terms. I mean, you've enumerated the in-kind value of it, but it would be, and the likelihood of it continuing beyond that is probably not. The project got started late, so that whole calendar year of data collection is not going to conclude till probably early next year. So it may be that until we find out what the status of that project going forward, that it may not renew after this coming year, or it may cease well before the end of the lease term. We'll find out. The funding that was anticipated for the large-scale plant did not make it into the state budget. There is state funding for the continuation of the effort, not to let it die, but certainly not to the extent where you could actually begin to look at large-scale construction. But, I mean, the project is still very much alive. It'll have to be probably scaled down and determine how it's going to proceed going forward. But it may be that this lease will not make it through the entire year.
Okay. Good enough. We have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 8, consider an action on a professional services agreement with Response Management Associates, Inc., RMA, to provide program management for the recently awarded security grant. The item that is being presented today is a little different from the one that was presented last board meeting. I apologize, there were a few mistakes on there, or some things that were being added. If you'll notice, just to give you a little background on it, we applied for a security grant last year and received notice this year that it was approved. Mr. Rich Tudor was working with the port, with Black and Beach at the time, and in our master plan, we had contracted him to actually work on our security program and our facility security plan. So under that funding mechanism, he wrote our security grant, and it was accepted. So going forward, the staff is recommending that we keep him on board to follow through with the security grant and the approach that he wrote into this grant. I've broken it down, and this is what is actually changed from the prior presentation. You'll see that we have 3 different projects in our security grant, and the total cost of each are written there. And out by the side is the program management cost. The project 1 and 3 are the same, but project 2 is actually taken out the assessment and the training exercises and the community awareness program, taken all that component out of it and just left the program management. So the total cost of this contract, as presented in the last board meeting, was around $472,000, and now you can see that it's come down to about $322,000. It's about $150,000 different. And actually, the services that they will be providing for us is detailed in a memo that I've also written and attached to you. But not only will they be acting as the grant coordinator and administrator, but as a liaison with the agencies that are going to be involved in that grant, which is Homeland Security, TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, and just oversee the programs and allow the court to proceed on the correct path and make sure that we're complying with all the regulations. Mr. Tubner and Eric from RMA are here in the audience, so if anyone has any questions of them or me, we'd be happy to answer.
A couple of comments, if I may, because I know at the last meeting, presented this form and I asked to be tabled, not because of the issue associated with RMA or the question that came up, but because, do we need to go out for proposals? I requested that we need to go back and redefine the scope. In this regard, we do not need to go out for proposals. I stated that at the last meeting. I believe it's a professional service contract under the provisions of the statute. We can proceed to hire this firm now. We've already gone through the process of qualifying them in terms of determining their capabilities, assessing what they bring to the table, and we did that in the process of, if you recall, the Black & Veatch contract as the general contractor on the master plan. They went ahead and essentially subordinated the master plan as the primary contractor to RMA. So, this is a firm that we're familiar with. We know their capabilities. Instrumental in not only helping secure the grants, but I think another thing that is important, and my concern primarily, is the implementation schedule to meet the TWIC card rollout. I told you at the last meeting, for example, that we were going to be meeting with the folks from TSA about the TWIC program rollout, and they were at our port yesterday. We've got certain timelines that need to be met. The fact that we were selected as a pilot port was kind of a precursor to the fact that we were going to get the grant to implement those things that are in the facility and security plan necessary to meet all of compliance. So certainly from a staff perspective, as it relates to the capabilities and qualifications of the firm, we're comfortable with that. I guess the question, if there's issues about whether or not we should go out for proposals and so forth, is just, that's one, is determine whether we should or not. But my biggest concern continues to be is the timeline necessary for implementation. We've got to get going on this. So whatever the wishes of the board, but certainly from the standpoint of whether or not this firm is capable and whether or not we should proceed, staff feels comfortable with how we've gotten to this point and certainly feels comfortable moving forward and would recommend that we do that. Now, there are components of this grant that will require us to go out and solicit other services, and that's what we needed to go back and qualify. And this is for the project management component, and making sure that what we have done to date we comply with, and it is going to be very critical that we have that liaison with the federal agencies that are a big part of this rollout. What we don't want to do is get caught up in a cookie-cutter approach to the TWIC rollout. The issues with our port are uniquely different than the issues in New York or California or in Wilmington, Delaware. In our case, we don't compete with domestic ports. We compete with ports to the south of us, and what may affect us and affect the port in the Texas coast is different. But what affects us in a way of either time or money, may affect us in our competition to the south. So we do have, I believe, some unique issues that we're going to have to deal with, and TWIC rollout is going to be critical for us. It is going to change to some extent the way we operate this port, and it is going to have some operational challenges, and certainly not only for us but for those that are involved in the movement of goods and services from those designated areas. So, we're here again, Mr. Tubner, and is here. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to respond to it.
What kind of timelines are we talking about?
We probably got about 18 months. And one is that the actual TWIC requirements in terms of the participation, those timelines are going to be adjusted. We're going to be actually working and developing the program while at the same time trying to meet the TWIC card timeline requirements. So essentially is that if everybody has to have a TWIC card in 6 months or in 1 year, and while we'll start working to implement the program, that doesn't push the timeline for us to have to comply. We'll be in the process of complying while we're working on rolling out the program. Now, the assurance that we do have is that, obviously there'll have to be some flexibility from the federal entities, but I think yesterday's meeting, getting them down here, getting them to see what's actually on the ground and how we are different than other ports will be a plus, but it will be from a compliance standpoint. We're not going to get any slack on when we must be in compliance. The only thing we'll be working with is how we actually roll out that compliance.
And the total grant package is spread over a 3-year period.
Okay.
So we have up to 3 years to implement some portions of it.
Well, let me just say this. I'm actually the one that had asked at the last meeting whether this particular item needed to go out for a request for proposal. And this, I understand that we don't have to, but I think we should. We've certainly set a precedent here at the port that even for professional services, we've gone out for requests for proposals. In cases of hiring attorneys, we've asked for proposals. In cases for hiring engineers, most recently with respect to Dock 16, we asked for proposals. And I think that's the better course here. As far as competence is concerned, I don't have any reason to doubt this particular company's competence. I know that they're working on the master plan. We're still waiting for phase 1 of that. I know it's been promised to us a couple of months ago. We still haven't received it, but I expect it to be delivered shortly. And then the issue is value. We've already, from one meeting to the next, we've already shaved off about $80,000 from the contract price.
No, it was just that I was adding more into their contract than just the services. That's what I was trying to explain on Project 2. That's performing an assessment and doing training exercises and community awareness, and I was including that whole component, not just the project management. So that would actually be a component that we could go out for proposals and seek for other companies.
Okay, well.
So, it wasn't that they came down on their price. It was just that more...
We've refined the scope?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, and that's another thing that a request for proposal would do is refine the scope of the work. But, one of the other purposes of a request for proposal is that it does make sure that we're getting the value that we're paying, because the more money we spend on services, the less money we have to spend on infrastructure, on security, actual infrastructure, or whether it's an additional police officer, for example. We may be spending the salary of a police officer in a professional services agreement that might otherwise be reduced. So I say this with great regret because I want to support the port director and everything that he's doing, but I must respectfully part company with him on this issue. I would like to see us go out for request for proposal on this item. So if that's not the will of the board, I will have to vote against it.
Before we go there, just a comment. If we were to go for proposals, how much time are we talking about before we can
set us back 45 to 60 days, and I'm not so sure we have that. The other thing, too, is that the prices in here are governed by the ceiling set floors in the grant package as far as government rates. So we're not really going to be negotiating any kind of rate savings because, they're set. You cannot charge more than what the government is willing to pay. So, they're going to have to comply with the requirements of the grant request. And I can appreciate and understand your comments, but again, I think, my concern is the timing issues. I don't want us to fall behind. We are already behind in a lot of aspects of the facility plan implementation, and that'll pose a challenge to us. One comment I would like kind of making just as a follow-up is that you talked about the master plan, and I'll tell you, on the master plan, I think the holdup there has been us. I mean, I'm not us being staff. It's not. I'm sure that phase one is they'd like nothing better than get ready to move on to phase two. So, but I will concur with you that very shortly you will receive a copy of the final draft. But again, it's those issues. If there was going to be, kind of any breach and if it weren't legal or anything, I would not bring it to you. I did run the traps on that, and again, this thing has been on track, and we've got to get into implementation.
Well, and I think there's always deadlines. When the BISD builds a new school, there's always an urgent need for that school, and yet they go out for proposals from architects.
Not all the time. I mean, they have a tendency to build a package of schools or go with the same architect, and then they might renew it every so many years. But if we had another grant that was going to require another kind of service and it didn't involve this group, we may very well go back. But I think from how we've reached this point, time is critical.
I think we have the staff that can develop the RFP. We've had that before with Doc 16. They developed the RFP. We can certainly put in there a fuse that the RFP expires on a certain date, and the work must commence on a certain date. That would then possibly weed out some people from responding. But I think without that, we really can't be assured that we're getting maximum value for the contract. So, as I say, I would my preference would be to move to table this to allow for an RFP to go out. And I think, Mr. Campiano, with your experience at the PUB coupled with Hector Lopez, I think an RFP can be done pretty quickly.
I still think we're going to lose at least 60 days, and I think it's a matter of time, and we need to get this report rolling on that TWIC card as soon as possible. I'll make a motion to go forward.
With regard to the technology, what kind of proven technology would be used for this project?
The TWIC is going to be developed. We're the port that's going to develop the readers.
One of the things that's happening now is that the TSA is just about ready to release the specifications for the readers themselves. So, I mean, as this thing is helping, they're just developing those. So there isn't a reader out there yet that you can say, okay, we want to try it. The other thing that we want to do with the readers is once the TSA says, okay, we've got umpteenth number of contractors that we've certified as saying as they can develop the reader necessary to do what you want to do. And what we want the readers to do, that's another thing. That hasn't been developed. I mean, it's going to be a myriad of things. It isn't just, okay, that it's a biometric, I guess the best way they put it, it's an identity management system. But it's a national identity management system that relays to the maritime industry. So they're developing a specification for a reader a reader that multiple companies will produce. But maybe what the Port of Seattle wants it to do, or the additional things and capabilities that the Port of Seattle will want it to do, may be different. There are some basic program requirements that you can't deviate, which are the TWIC compliance issues, but there are a lot of things. So what we hope to do essentially is to try to test multiple readers on site before we would even make the decision when we go out for the specifications to say, this reader is the one that we're going to decide to purchase. I mean, that's why some of these things are moving targets, because there is nothing set in stone just yet. And that's why we are one of the we're one of really 3 pilot projects in this process. And that's why we got the grant, is to implement that TWIC pilot program.
Well, now, can we break this down, since they're in 3 different components? If we have to go through with the TWIC compliant program, can't we break that down
well, they're all interrelated. I mean, the large component of it is a component that will help with TWIC compliance. It's not just TWIC specific. That one does involve more of a regional approach, and it does have various partners in it. But you know, my concern would be that on the TWIC access control package, but all the grants are related. I mean, it was awarded as a package. They each do something a little bit different, but they're all related to the facility planning, the security planning, and the TWIC compliance.
Got a motion on the table.
Okay.
We need to move forward with it.
Whose motion is first?
There's only one.
There's only one.
Oh, okay.
Motion. Any comments?
I'm right there in the middle of the road here. I want to kind of go with the recommendation of staff, and at the same time, I'm kind of torn with the fact that I do agree with going out and seeing if we can get a better deal. I just,
Mr. Capitano, have you made any inquiries whether any companies locally can do this?
This isn't really a local
I
type
figured as
service.
much, but
this is
I mean, have you checked?
It is specific. I mean, you probably have a handful of firms out there who are doing this. I mean, the same people who are dealing with the Port of Long Beach, L.A. would be a firm you would go to. The same people. I mean, this isn't really a local service because a lot of what's in here hasn't been developed. Remember, it's the TWIC implementation. It only hits so many entities, it's still in the infancy because it's still in the development stage. So it's not like there's a whole resource of people who have been experienced in rolling this out. One. Two is that the port security and the facility planning deal is like, you know, if you want to go out and engineer, you know, you have civil engineers, you have electrical and mechanical. I mean, so it is a little bit more specialized. Most of the people that are doing this have been in the business, and typically because post 9/11, a lot of the military and security facility planning, I mean, no different than Mr. Tubner. I mean, these are probably Coast Guard, port type of deal that have worked. I mean, this is kind of a new deal. It's been developed since as a reaction to 9/11. So you may have local contractors and local support that will be helpful when we go out and solicit the actual implementation, because you're going to have equipment and you're going to have work that's going to have to be done and designed to actually where you're going to place the readers, how all this is going to work. So there may be components of the implementation that will be available for local participation or local competition, but the actual TWIC, the actual security facility plan, it is kind of a specialized service.
Well, let me ask you this. What if if we decide to go out for RFP, if we make it a specification of the RFP that it needs to be implemented by X date, and if not, then the project manager's fees are docked?
Well, I think we're going to be under the gun by the essentially TSA to implement. I mean, they're not going to. We're already under the gun by the Coast Guard. In fact, George isn't here today, but I mean, they're out there already with their little citation book saying, you know, if you don't do this, we're going to cite you. And what we've been buying time on actually getting that is that, look, we're actually developing the program and doing this. So it's almost like. It's a very fluid process right now. We have a facility plan, we have a security plan, but even then that's going to have to be amended as we roll through this process. And I don't know, maybe if Mr. Tubner can, kind of address, the specifics of why we're under the gun on this thing, but I mean, we're not going to get cut any slack on implementation and enforcement. I mean, we're buying up time only because we're a pilot project and we've got the grant. But if we didn't have it, we'd have to be doing some things out there right now, regardless of whether we're a TWIC pilot port or not.
I have a question.
Yes.
The agenda item says approve a professional services agreement. Is there such an agreement?
Yes, it was presented in the last. It was in the last package.
Because it's not in the packet for this meeting. All it's there is a proposal.
It was the last one. I have it right here. It was in the last package. This package just made the corrections to the amount. But, I mean, the professional services contract did not change.
Yeah. And we can do that subject to council review and make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's.
Well, and I was thinking specifically about these time deadlines.
Well, I mean, the grant itself, when we accepted it, there's certain timelines in that we need to meet. Now, again, if we get cut any slack is the fact that we are a pilot port, and a lot of these things are going to be developed as we go forward. But we're not going to get cut any slack from an enforcement standpoint.
No, and one component of this, the first part of the project is cameras and monitoring systems, and that's a lot of what George is getting hit on right now, because we don't have the proper controls and we just don't have enough personnel to do all this, and the grant does not cover any personnel charges. I mean, we can't pay salaries out of a grant package. It specifically limits that.
Well, I know that Commissioner De Los Santos' motion is awaiting a second, but, once again, I think there are ways to cure the problem through an RFP by specifying in the RFP what the deadline is, and that if they don't meet that deadline, then their fees can be reduced by a certain amount. I think that's one way to handle it, and they certainly would have a financial incentive to meet our deadline. I certainly want us to be in compliance. We've always been in compliance. We've always been exemplary. But that's not really the issue here. The issue here is we kind of have a take-it-or-leave-it proposal here with no comparison shopping, so to speak.
Are there any other companies that could provide services as well?
It's not a whole lot of, it's not like there's a whole lot of people out there doing this, because there's not a whole lot of TWIC implementation going on right now. Or, I'm not going to tell you that there isn't anybody out there. Like I said, I'm sure that, they're not the consultants to the port of L.A. Long Beach. I'm sure they're not the consultants to the port of New York, New Jersey either. So, yes, I'm sure there are others. Where we are to date on this, is my concern.
It may be that.
Again, the other thing too about whether or not we get, if the contractor doesn't perform, they're not going to get paid, and so it isn't just a matter of timeline. Because I think one of the things that while we have the grant timeline to meet, one of the things that will be fluid is that it isn't definitive. We don't know what all of the TWIC regulations and all of the if TSA is late in issuing a specification for another component, we can't control that. They're only, they've been working on this for how long, and they're just getting ready to release what is the first set of specifications only on the reader component. They still got the issue with the card, the biometric, and how that's going to work and all that. So while I understand that if the contractors should perform, they don't get paid. On the other hand, is that we have the program that's being developed, but we also have the enforcement issues, and the Coast Guard is here today now on enforcement. They're not going to go away, and they're not going to wait for after 3 years to see if you did it or you didn't do it. So it's a little harder than just to take it as a straight, kind of engineering or accounting or those. There isn't an abundance of a lot of effort in this going on at the present time. It's pretty strategic, pretty specific, and a lot of it is dependent on how the regs are going to get rolled out.
Let me ask a little different question. How do we know that the project management cost of what we're being charged is reasonable?
Because they're capped by what the GSA rates are.
So GSA themselves.
And the other thing I want to make clear, remember, you're not in a professional service. You're not going to award a contract based on price. It's based on qualifications. You cannot go out and solicit a professional service on a bid basis. You go out and qualify the firm and you negotiate. Now, the deal here, it makes it a little easier, is because it is an open-ended. We do have a set of rates. They are the government ceilings for these rates, and that's what we're going to follow.
And they're charging us the ceiling.
And yes, they can't go beyond that.
But somebody else could charge lower.
Well, they could, conceivably, but chances are they probably won't.
We don't know.
Yeah.
That $30,000 a year could pay for a police officer.
But he can't, because the police officer's salary cannot come out of the grant.
Well,
one
it sounds like we're just trying to spend the money.
Mr. Tubner, I just need to ask you regarding, the master, you working on our master plan. Would this have any interference with this additional project that you guys would be undertaking? Because that was not originally on the master plan, correct?
Well, that's as Port Director stated earlier.
the facility security assessment, the facility security plan was supported. What happened is we did an analysis of the port, came up with the vulnerabilities, and designed a mitigation.
Can I stop for a second and you can stand up over here so the public can see what you're saying, please? Thank you. Identify yourself, please.
Richard Tubner from Response Management Associates. As part of the scope for Phase 1 of the master plan was to analyze environmental issues, for compliance programs, what does the port need to be competitive with on the environmental side. Security was another analysis that was completed along with infrastructure, along with the leases, along with a variety of other different things. It's the daily operation of the port. The facility security assessment was completed to be in compliance with the Coast Guard requirement to have one every 5 years. We redid it. Now, we had a reason to do that, to support a grant program that would sustain the growth of the port. We had to redo the assessment for 5 years. The port's changed, and the regulations have changed. There's a variety of different things. Identified vulnerabilities within that assessment, and then we made a plan, developed a plan with mitigations. Now, these mitigations were supported by this year's grant package. So we campaigned with the Coast Guard and DHS to get help to implement TWIC, the Specification Worker Identification Credential process. It's a process-driven program. The second part of it is a two-phase program. The first part is where everybody here, everybody that has unsupported access to the port will have to get a credential. They'll have to apply for it. They'll have to have it to be in a secure area, restricted area on the port. That piece of it is set in stone, and there's a timeline that's we're going to get notified in about a week before we're required to have all our people complete the application process. After that, we'll have 60 days to be in compliance with the regulations that's out there. And so when the port director talks about TWIC, that's what he's talking about. The second piece of that, the Coast Guard is also having regulatory portion for the equipment. The TWIC is supposed to be a contactless biometric reader. So it's like a card, like Donna has on her, the proximity card that is issued by DHS. And when a person shows it, it's just not the card. It's just not like we swipe it right now and a gate opens. What it does is it goes through to determine that that card and the guy holding the card are one and the same. So there's a biometric inside that card. And what this piece is to test that technology. So what we're doing is we're actually going out to DHS that help us do this. And they agreed to it, us with two other ports. So we are going to be the test bed, a national spotlight to implement their program. So they're going to go out of their way to help us. And that's what we're talking about. We're looking at getting new technology, testing new technology, reserve the costs that were the implementation costs for other things. You know, the port would have had to do it either way. So what we did is we got the grants to support this program. So the vulnerabilities of these grants, these two grant projects are fixing, are mitigating, are vulnerabilities that were identified in the facility security assessment and have been identified in the plan. So when George gets a citation, it's because the Coast Guard said the regulations are out there and you've had time to implement them, and what we're saying is that we are implementing. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But the clock's already ticking. There's a September 4th date for telling the Coast Guard what we were going to do to change the program, and then within the time frame that they've given us to get fixed. They've given us till December 1st to do a lot of this stuff. That's 3 months, and that's to have stuff in the ground, signs up, and some of the mitigations done. So there's a variety of timeline issues. But we started. It's not like we're just jumping in the middle of this. We started the process, and it was scoped in Phase 1 because it was an analysis of our report now. We identified a process to get in compliance with regulations and provide a path forward over the next few years. This is part of the path forward.
I think maybe the question was, is taking this on going to slow down the delivery of the medical?
No,
It won't.
It won't at all. Not at all.
Okay.
And also, we have another grant package coming up in December. This is another round. This will be the 8th round of the grant funding. And what we're going to try to do is continue on the same direction that we're going and apply for more money to finish what we started or do the next phase of what we started, because it's an ongoing process. The court needs a lot of things.
And again, we don't do the equipment, we don't do the technology pieces, we don't do the installation. Any of that, it's kind of the
Just the management side of it.
overall management of the security improvement program.
So we're still gonna have to subcontract a lot of the...
And some of those pieces might be the ones that would provide opportunity for locals, because, I mean, obviously the reader isn't, but the installation component of it may very well, and some of those other things associated with it, but, I mean, those remain to be seen. There's an outreach component with this process. There's an educational component with this process. The implementation component, I listening to TFA talk yesterday, and I think the implementation component for us is going to be huge, because we're not dealing with a truck driver in Camden, New Jersey. We're going to be dealing with many truck drivers who are only coming to the States for one thing, and that's to deliver a load. And I think our outreach and our educational component and working with the subcontractor for that, which is going to be Lockheed Martin, is going to be entirely different than what they're going to do in other parts of the country. So there will be some of those opportunities.
Another example of another recent example of where we went out for proposals for professional services was in the case of Mr. Silva. Mr. Silva came to us through request for proposals through the Bridge Committee, and we know what kind of a job he's doing. I understand what you're saying. I know as a lawyer, when another case comes in, I always say that it doesn't affect my ability to take care of the case before me, but it does. And we need the first plan. We need phase one of the master plan. I'd like to get that. Now. And perhaps by going out for RFP, you can use that extra time to finish it up.
We finish it.
Okay. We just don't have it.
Staff has it.
Okay. So, anyway, with all due respect to Commissioner De Los Santos, I'd like the chair to rule that his motion fails for lack of a second.
What is like I said, I'm borderline. What does the rest of the commission feel?
How many ports has RMA done, sir, with projects such as this? Over the past 3 years or 5 years, whatever.
It's really in the Gulf region.
Mm-hmm.
It's been probably serviced every port for a facility in that port, or Shell or Motiva. It's kind of this package is a regional package, which is one of the reasons why we had it. And this regional package includes Trans-Montana and Citgo. So if you take in all the facilities that we've helped through this process, probably every port in Texas and a variety of other ones on the West Coast and East Coast. So I venture to guess we've probably 50 ports.
Okay. Any other comments, Commissioner? Mr. Muscle?
Just in the event that we were to go for qualifications and all of that, in the event that you were selected, would you be able to, hit the ground running? What?
We're ready to hit the ground running right now, so I guess the answer would be yes.
Okay.
I guess we have a motion on the table by Commissioner De Los Santos for item number 8. Do we have a second? Motion fails for lack of second.
I'm sorry. One more comment. If we actually table this, could we set up a special meeting where we can actually, instead of going off for RFQs, can we and staff go out and see who else does this kind of work?
You can do this multiple ways. One is that if we don't do this, then we're going to stop whatever work we got on it, and that might pose a problem with our December 1st deadline with the Coast Guard. That's number one. Two is that how you go out, you can go out and select 5 firms that do this and just ask them to submit. You don't have to go through the newspaper or the process of putting it in a publication. I mean, how you go out and do that, varies. I mean, if you wanted to say, okay, you can drag this out where the first thing you do is solicit qualifications. That's the first one. And then based on those qualifications, you can select who you wish to submit proposals. Okay? And then once you get those proposals, then you can decide to interview the firms, make presentations, or based on the proposals, decide on who you choose to negotiate with.
Let me ask.
So I mean, there are multiple processes in these. Or you can go out and say, you know what, we're not happy with one, let's go out and find 3 others. Ask them all to submit it and base it on that. I would say that we don't have the time to go through that real long, drawn-out formal proposal.
And I like that. And my only concern is, just opening it up, letting others have an opportunity to get involved and have an opportunity to get a contract like this.
Can we take it?
Maybe we can just do that and have a special meeting.
Well, I was
so
going
that we can.
Yeah, along with it, rather than lose time, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Port Director, rather than lose time, Mr. Chairman, do you think that we can act now on something related to item 8, but not exactly like item 8? For example, can we make a motion to, rather than lose time, can we make a motion to proceed with the plan that you're talking about now?
I mean, we can come back. I mean, if you want to see, I can go try to find, I don't know if I can go out and find 10 firms that are doing this.
Maybe 5.
But maybe I can find 3 to 5 or whatever. But my point, too, is that there are some things that are time sensitive. And if we're not going to do it today, then, I'm not going to have them work because they may not get paid for whatever effort they may put into implementation. So that concerns me. Now, I do want us to proceed on the TWIC implementation. I mean, to me, that is a critical component because we're already talking to TSA. We're already talking about what needs to be done to roll that out. Now, there are other components to this that are the bigger picture, the facility plan, the security plan, the partners that are going to be part of this. That bigger piece may be the one that we want to go out and see. I mean, if you want even included in that someone to look over the shoulder that, these guys have done it right and we can do that too. But I don't want to, totally put off the TWIC component because that one is, that one I do have a concern. I mean, there are some things in here that, like I said, we're already on the clock as far as compliance is concerned with the Coast Guard in terms of security, in terms of what we need to have in place, what we don't have in place, how quickly we're going to implement those things. Some of those things are what is in the grant to actually use those funds to comply. Some of them aren't. I mean, if they wanted us to go out tomorrow and start, fencing off, oil cargo docks, I mean, we obviously have to move a lot quicker than what we're going to do with how we're going to implement some of these components of it. But, I mean...
so are you suggesting that we proceed with just the TWIC?
At this point, I would, and then I think, I think that the other thing I would like to do, because TWIC to me is critical. I mean, we're in the TWIC program for a reason, and that is because of the services and efforts that they brought to the table. And we're in the TWIC program, which essentially guaranteed us getting the grant to implement the TWIC because of the efforts in the initial master plan and their efforts. So that part to me is critical. The other components about how we're going to roll out the bigger picture, I can go out and try to find 3 to 5 additional firms or total that are in there, ask for proposals, bring them back to you, and hey, who's out there that can do this? Ultimately, I think there's a lot of newness to this. I mean, as I'm starting to get, for example, the people out there know that we're a pilot project. So as these specifications start to hit, we're going to start getting calls. We're already starting to get calls from vendors saying, I work for so-and-so, and we've got, this and that. So, some of those things will start to develop as we go. But if we're going to do this, I would much rather go out and try to find the companies and go through the long, drawn-out process of the RFQ and then followed by an RFP and the formal advertising. Because even if we advertise locally, how's a firm in L.A. who does this going to know about it?
Would this keep us I guess, in line with the deadline that you talked about, Mr. Campirano?
Well, there's multiple
December?
deadlines. I'm just saying that, again, we've got 3 years to implement the whole grant, and there's different components of it. There are some things that we may be able to meet, other things we won't. But I don't want us. I mean, the TWIG card part of it is going to hit us sooner than we think. I mean, they're going to require people to have TWIG, whether you have your program implemented or not. So the very first part of that is getting that thing going and getting that thing issued and determining who needs it and how we secure the restricted areas, whether we decide to go with a physical barrier, whether we decide to go with a virtual barrier, how we decide to monitor, what is the equipment. There's still, I think, time on that.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and proceed and approve the TWIG compliant access control package to RMA, and that you go ahead and search or look for 5 companies that can do this type of work.
Up to 5. How's that?
Up to 5.
And we better send George on vacation so he doesn't get cited.
We have a motion on the table.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Zavaleta.
Mr. Tubner's got
Mr. Tubner?
I also want to comment, I think that there was a little bit of misunderstanding on the proposal also, because the proposal was on a time and materials basis. And what has been identified is that what's going to set aside for the project management. It's not a fixed fee. This thing is a time and materials basis based off of a approved rate list. And it's not, the way it was presented and the way that it was presented to the Coast Guard for approval on DHS is that this is the amount that will be set aside. It's not, it's time and materials. If we work 10 hours on something, that's what you'll get charged. We're not going to work 10 hours and charge you the upper limit of the project management fee. So there was no cost. That cost came right out of the project guidelines.
Well, and the majority of that cost comes. I mean, there is a local match component to this whole process too. So it isn't totally being funded by the grant.
Well, I think, did I second your motion?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yes. Well, we have a motion on the table by Commissioner Masso to accept it with the conditions set forth with the TWIG compliant access control package, and seconded by Commissioner Zavaleta. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm sorry.
Can I just ask a question? Would you accept that for Project 3 also? You made a proposal for Project 1, 2, and 3.
We made a proposal for a professional service agreement. We've given it a professional service agreement.
We hope that you're one of the 5 that submits proposals.
I mean, you may still get the other ones, but just,
Okay, for clarification, Commissioner Little Campos abstained from that.
No.
Voted no, I'm sorry. Voted no.
Item number 9, consider an action to enter into an agreement for professional engineering services with LNG Engineering for the construction of internal port road project with the Texas Department of Transportation, TxDOT.
Chairman, I'm the Commissioner. Mr. Campirano, good afternoon. I'll be brief. I request that we table this item. I was hoping that by today I would have received final clearance from TxDOT on the proposed scope that we presented to them last week. We have not, and so I didn't want to have to. I was hoping that I would have had that, so I wouldn't have to wait until the next board meeting, which I knew would be canceled a month go by.
We might have a special meeting.
No. At this time, I'm not ready because of the implications of the contract with respect to approvals.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Logan.
Item 10, consider an action to adopt the joint memorandum of agreement for the Cameron County Coastal Impact Task Force Committee.
Since the inception of the County Task Force Committee, we have met twice, and the first step was to develop basically a joint memorandum of agreement that will delineate the cooperative efforts between the parties. Mainly, it presents the purpose and the goals, the responsibilities, the program oversight, rule regulations, and understanding between all the parties. There are truly no items related to expenses or contributions. It's just of a generality to know the rules of the game. The next step will be to develop the bylaws, which will then be presented to you for approval. This memorandum of agreement has already been approved by the County Court Commission.
There's nothing really binding in this. The intent is to provide for a collaborative regional approach to trying to access funds for GLO, and there's a process locally for arriving at what kind of projects might be eligible, and it really guarantees that our area would receive funding for projects that the task force deem important, and those can include such things as dredging, beach renourishment, enhancements to Bahia Grande, for example, and things of that nature. So, and it doesn't preclude an individual entity from going after funding either. And so it kind of shows that we're working on a collaborative effort, and I think the experience of other coastal areas that are collaboratively going out for these funds has been more successful when they do it that way than to go out individually and do it. So we've agreed to participate in this process. I think Chairman Aramula and Hector are the members of the task force.
I make the motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 11, consider an action to award bids for tandem vibratory roller received September the 11th, 2007.
We opened the bid, and we had sent out 16 packets. We received 5 bidders and pieces of equipment. And looking at the bids, we had asked for used equipment. We had a set of specifications and some equipment. They're bidding $28,000 for a lower piece of equipment that hit on all of the specifications. They're offering a 1-year warranty. 2005, about 400 hours of use. That's exactly what they were looking for. They went out to bid on this. They did submit a bid, so they didn't really get on all the specifications. There were 2 new pieces of equipment that were bid. Both of those were smaller in horsepower than we had asked for. So Joe has looked at this very carefully, and this piece of equipment is a good piece of equipment. We have pictures of it. It's in very good shape.
And this is what he wants and what we need.
What we need.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
Just one question on that, Ms. Seymour. It comes without a warranty?
1 year.
1 year.
Okay.
It is
Parts
used,
and
but
labor.
it does come with 1 year.
Parts and labor?
Yeah. Good enough.
So first of all, I can say it was parts and labor.
Yes,
Parts and labor.
on the drivetrain and the
All right.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion on the table by Commissioner Zavaleta and seconded by Commissioner Massa for item 11. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 12, consider an action on bids received at the public auction of the Border Shipyard Jalapenos Trawlers, Inc. improvements held on September the 10th, 2007. Actions to be considered include awarding the bid, approving the issuance of the bill of sale for the assets, and approving the lease for the site.
This item is ready for your consideration. The bid went off at $50,100 for the assets. We're very pleased. I do need to report to you, we have received the money, we have received an application. However, we did not meet the deadline that we had set last Wednesday. We did receive it late. At this point, we don't have a lease application to give to you. If you will choose to accept this bid, even though it was late, they will go, this is a bid from a group of, I believe it's down to 10 of our shrimpers, so that they can put this back into operation as a dry dock for their own equipment. And they will then go and file their incorporation papers with the state so that they can come back with a name and an incorporation franchise. So we can get back to you at the next board meeting with the application and further information.
Any particular reason why they didn't meet the deadline?
They came in before the deadline with some cash, some checks, and they had to then take those checks to the bank, and there were holds placed on the checks because they're trying to convert checks to cash.
But they did their due diligence in getting here in time, and the process took them. Is there any problem with accepting it?
No, there's no problem with accepting it. I mean, they got the money here, it was just in the form of checks rather than cash.
Okay.
I mean, there's no legal problem. The only risk that you run is if you're unable to work out a lease with them. Now they bought a bunch of stuff on a lease site that they don't have. It was supposed to be a package deal.
I'll go with recommendation of staff. I'll make a motion.
We would approve this, subject to bringing back a lease that is acceptable to the board. They won't have access to the site, they won't see anything else. We'll bring you the bill of sale and the investigation.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
We have a motion on the table by Commissioner Cristiano, seconded by Commissioner Mazza for item 12. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 13, adjourn to executive session.
Now, 6:50, we adjourn into executive session.